There are all kinds of music. Now we know that there's this kind of music too.
Small and warm, clean and bright, you
Of course, this is very different to our tastes, but it was quite nice to hear a traditional song.
I think we did more than we expected in the end. I don't know if how much will that kind of, what kind of trace will that leave here, but it's a big step for, no, it's a small step for Lamba and a big step for humanity.
When you want to make shoes like no one else, you have to ask questions no one else has asked.
My heart wants to beat like the colors from the lake, with the sound of music. For 1,000 years, the hills fill my hunger with the sound of music. My heart it wants to sing every song it hears. My heart wants to sigh like a child that flies from a charge on a breeze. The riddles are alive with the sound of music. With songs that have sung for 1,000 years. The hills fill my hunger with the birds that rise from the lake to the trees. My heart was the sign like a child that flies from the church on a breeze. To love like a brook when it trips and falls over stones on its way to sea with eyes like a lark who's learning to pray.
This week, I'd like to never forget it.
Ja, misschien.
Alles sind besessen, alles sind verflucht, alles sind gekreuzigt, sind kaputt. Von Machtstechnologie, von Zeitökonomie, von Qualität des Lebens und Kriegsphilosophie. Ein Preis hier, kommt doch mit mir. Ein Preis hier, meine Hände reichen dir. Ein Preis hier, meine Freunde kommt mit mir. Ein Preis hier, und herum, das ist nicht fair. Wir tanzen alle equal. Simon Apolloni. Wir tanzen viel drüber. Wir tanzen nicht mehr fair. Wir Totalitarismus. Mit Demokratie. Wir tanzen mit Faschismus. Und Anarchie.
Okay, so that's the first Western band ever invited to perform in North Korea a few years ago. Laibach. Laibach is the German name for Ljubljana. Ljubljana is the capital of Slovenia. Slovenia was one of the countries that emerged from the breakup of Yugoslavia. And the German name for Ljubljana, the capital, is Laibach. And of course, one of the most famous Slovenians is Melania Trump, Donald Trump's wife, third wife. So why the North Koreans invited Laibach, I don't know. I haven't investigated, but they performed the hills are alive with the sound of music, because I guess in part because that song from that old American film from at least 50 years ago was very popular in North Korea. So they performed it while they were there. Okay. we need to make sure I don't forget to do the class attendance, and I want to make sure that I've got the attendance open, and it should be there. So and so I want to share screen, and so stop share, and then we go to close that, and we go to screen share, and there we go, and we go there, and we are policymaking European Union, attendance, click on attendance, and week 13, and add smart attendance, and your lucky number is 309. 309 is your lucky number. 309, 309. Okay, so once again, I'm a little bit feeling a little unusual. I had another conference, Zoom conference with the Academic Conference United States that was supposed to be in St. Louis, Missouri. And that conference started at 11 o'clock at night, every night. The panels, the conference started at 11 o'clock every night and ended at ended at 8 o'clock this morning. So let me just show you and it doesn't come up. I don't know why it doesn't come up, but let me see if I can find it. Okay, so one more time, and I just wanted to show you the schedule, which should be open, and maybe I didn't open it. Okay, so here, and so now we go to screen share, and just to show you what I was doing, spending my weekend on, and for some reason I can't find it here, and it's not showing up. Oh, there it is. Shares. So there you can see, and there were Zoom links to all of the panels, and this last one that I attended ended at 8 o'clock this morning, an hour ago. So, so that's what I've been up to, and I presented a paper there yesterday. So, okay, so our short class today, and so let me go back to the file for this week and open up, make sure I've got the lesson plan already open. And so we go here and we go to screen share again and open up the lesson plan, and there's the lesson plan. And so on Friday, we have a debate between me and Hyunji Lee on this topic. To South Koreans, the EU will collaborate more with China than with the US to lead global responses to the effects of anthropogenic global climate change. And anthropogenic means human caused, man caused, people caused global climate change. So will the European Union collaborate more with China or more with the United States? Of course, this syllabus with these debate topics were prepared months ago before the election, of course. And so I didn't know if Donald Trump was going to be reelected or not. But even with Joe Biden in office, it's not clear how much Biden administration will be able to take a global leadership position in organizing global responses to global challenges like climate change. So, and I will be pro, and Hyunji Lee will be con. So that should be exciting. And this week we are reading about the European Union and the rest of the world. So we're beginning to talk more about the European Union as an actor in international affairs. So let me first open up some items to get you excited about this topic. And I have to screen share, and I go to screen share, and it should show up, and it's not, there it is, okay. So here you see a press release from 6 years ago, over 6 years ago. So the first high representative for the common foreign security policy of the European Union, Catherine Ashton, was the first high representative. Lady Ashton was the first representative for the new, in the position of the high representative of the European Union for the common foreign security policy, was a position formally created with the Treaty of Lisbon in 2009. And she was the first representative, followed by an Italian, and now by the current person, who's the third person in that position. And it notes that she is visiting the Republic of Korea, and the European Union signed its first strategic partnership with a country outside of Europe, with South Korea. South Korea will be the first country to have entered into this trio of agreements with the European Union on trade, political, and now security issues. It says here, as part of her visit, High Representative Ashton will further consolidate the legal and institutional framework governing EU-Korea relations by signing a framework participation agreement aimed at facilitating future Korean participation in EU common security and defense policy operations. So common security and defense policy is the effort to develop the military capabilities of the European Union to support the European Union's common foreign and security policy, right? Not necessarily military capabilities to coerce actors, but even to develop the military capabilities for humanitarian intervention and peacekeeping. European Union peacekeeping forces are active, for example, particularly in African countries, more in African countries, not to mention, of course, also in the former Yugoslavia countries, in Bosnia and Croatia, not in Croatia, Bosnia and Macedonia, Kosovo as well, and also in African countries. So, it says here that in Seoul, a high representative for the and vice president of the European Commission, Ashton, will meet with President Park Geun-hye, yay, you all remember Park Geun-hye, and carry out consultations with Foreign Minister Yoon Dae-se. Okay, so South Korea got a first place in this position, and that might partly explain why we have our European guest students here from France and Belgium and other countries here at Catholic University of Korea, because the European Union and South Korea are very much emphasizing cooperation, collaboration, coordination between South Korea and European Union here in Asia. And let me see if I can move this bar out of the way that keeps blocking things. Let me open this up. And so there you see, oh, there it says your screen saving. So there you see Catherine Ashton. I have to go back and do this. And there you see Catherine Ashton signs new agreement to deepen strategic partnership with South Korea. There you see the former president. Now she's in prison. So to consolidate the legal and institutional framework governing EU-Korea relations, High Representative Ashton further signed a framework participation agreement aimed at facilitating future Korean participation in EU common security and defense policy operations. The success of our strategic partnership in recent years gives me particular pleasure because I have been actively engaged in setting up the three main EU-Korea treaties that tie us together, she said in Seoul. To be more effective in addressing the many challenges we face, we need to work with partners, we need to join forces. South Korea will be the first country to have entered into a trio of agreements with the European Union on trade, public, and now security, which is testimony to the breadth and dynamism of the EU-Korea strategic partnership. So, and keep this in mind, North Korea doesn't have formal relations with many countries in the world, at least not many democratic countries, and some of the few countries with which it does have an active diplomatic representation by European countries includes European Union countries. So Sweden, for example, has an embassy in Pyongyang, and Sweden is part of the European Union. And so Sweden is particularly interested in North Korea, and that means the European Union is particularly interested in North Korea. Sweden is not the only country that it's not the only European country that has an embassy in Pyongyang, but it is one of the more prosperous ones that does. I think Bulgaria still has an embassy in North Korea, but you know, Poland doesn't have a lot of resources, economic resources to spare as the poorest country of the European Union. By the way, there's a Zoom seminar coming up in a couple of days about Nordic countries engaged in mediation and peacekeeping on the Korean Peninsula on Wednesday, our time. And so I will be attending that. Nordic means Denmark, Sweden, Norway, and Finland. Those are the 4 Nordic countries. So that will be interesting Zoom seminar on Wednesday that I'll be attending. And of course, everyone knows that Sweden has an embassy that's actively engaged in activities in Pyongyang. And including encouraging to the extent possible international investment but that's not really very feasible with the sanctions put on North Korea for its nuclear program, its nuclear weapons program. Okay, so let's look at the notes. And EU is a global actor. And let me see it. So let me go back. I have to open these notes here just to make sure that we begin to talk about them. So introducing a European foreign policy, and you know that is your that is your topic of your final exam, right? Is the European foreign policy. So it goes at the start here. At the start of the European Economic Community, the founders had little or no intention to create a new kind of international power in the world. So that goes back to a point that we made earlier, right? That do not believe or do not think that the European Union started as a grand plan strategy for bringing about a formula for peace in Europe. The founders of European integration effort after World War II tried various approaches, didn't even begin with economics, began with human rights and forming the Council of Europe, which is an important organization, focusing on human rights conditions inside the countries, but that was too sensitive and too slow. So the European Union, the founders of the European Coal and Steel Community decided to move forward with economic interests. And so there wasn't the plan back in 1951 when the Treaty of Paris was signed that they were going to somehow create a European foreign policy. That emerged as a side effect of the effort to create a European economic community with a single market, which required, for example, the European economic community to come up with a common position on international trade negotiations. As a single market, they had to come up with single tariff and non-tariff policy for all of the members of the European Economic Community, which, of course, when they did that, then they had to engage in negotiations and agreements with all the other countries of the world to engage in trade agreements with them. And if they're engaging in international negotiations for trade agreements, pretty soon you're talking about a foreign policy. Eventually, you have to talk about the political issues that affect trade negotiations. How can you open your European market or reduce tariffs to accessing the European Economic Community market to a country that is abusing human rights, to a country with a government that's very abusive of human rights in its country? How can you open up your market of the European Economic Community to the communist world, to the Soviet Union, which existed at the time? These are all political questions which deal with foreign policy, right? So the European Union agreed to form a common market, and so by definition, a common market requires a common trade policy. And the result was political spillover. You remember from neo-functionalism, we talked about spillover. And France demanded that a European Economic Community commitment to be included in the Treaty of Rome. Treaty of Rome was the founding treaty to establish the European Economic Communities to begin providing foreign development aid. France insisted on providing foreign development aid to create a free trade area with sub-Saharan African states, which of course had been part of the French Empire, right? France had an empire until the late 1950s into the early 1960s in North Africa and sub-Saharan African countries as well, and other European states, including later when Britain joined. These included brought their remembrances of their former empires that Britain and Portugal and Spain and Belgium and France left behind post-colonial states, and they wanted to maintain a relationship with these countries for many reasons, including political influence in the world, even if they're no longer going to be part of an empire, they still wanted to maintain ties with them for many reasons, including the desire to continue to play a powerful leading role in world affairs, and also that lots of French companies and British companies and Portuguese corporations and Spanish companies had lots of vested interests that they built up over hundreds of years, often, of controlling these countries, these regions of the world. Lots of people had family connections with these former colonies. And so there are a lot of different reasons why the European Economic Community, in coming up with a common market and a common trade policy, had to come up with particular policies to deal with much of the world. 79 African, Caribbean, and Pacific states, ACP states, established a partnership with the European Union. I mean, there are about 200 countries in the world, so almost 80 of those 200 established a partnership with the European Union. And as this partnership developed, many questions emerged. For example, should the European Economic Community put economic sanctions on states with brutal or aggressive regimes? We referenced that regarding human rights, for example. So European Economic Community member states decided to complement European economic trade policies with political issues, political criteria, political considerations. And these political criteria had to be agreed to. They had to establish them and agree to them, the member states of the European Economic Community. And so they had to get together and meet. The leaders of the governments of the European Economic Communities had to get together and meet. And that was the first informal meeting of the presidents and prime ministers of the European Economic Community member states to agree to cooperate politically in directing a common trade policy towards the rest of the world. And that would be the beginning of what was called political cooperation. This would become the European Council. The European Council is the formal name for the meeting of the prime ministers and presidents, the heads of government and states, HOGS, HOGS. And so later it became, it would be like much of the European Union history and development, something is tried informally and it becomes regular practice. And then to reinforce that, that regular practice and encourage it to be institutionalized and people to accept it and expect it, they formally agreed to it in a treaty, and in the European Union treaties. And so the European Council is formally recognized, of course, in the European Union treaties. And the European Union now aims to be a global power comparable to the US and China. What does comparable mean? Good question. What does comparable mean? It's a very good question, because with 27 member states, it seems questionable that the European Union is going to act like the nation states of the United States and the nation state of China or the nation state of Russia, particularly when it comes to issues involving the threat and use of deadly military force. If you're going to kill people, that's going to be very controversial, right? And particularly if you're going to put your own troops in harm's way, it seems to be doubtful that the European Union, as it develops a common defense and security policy, that it is going to be using that military capability to, in the name of Europe, to be attacking actors around the world. That's not to say that Europeans don't bomb and kill people. They do. Danish Air Force bombed Libya to overthrow Muammar Gaddafi several years ago in the so-called Arab Spring. The French bomb, the British bomb, but they don't do it in the name of Europe. They do it through NATO, through the North Atlantic Treaty Organization and their alliance with the United States. And Germany, as I said, won't participate in those kinds of operations at all, despite being requested and pressured by the United States and its allies to contribute to those military operations. They won't do it. They'll send peacekeeping forces, they'll send training forces to Afghanistan and Iraq, but they won't get in a position where they have to kill people. They just won't do it. Because of their history, because of Germany's history. But it's still comparable because of its economic power and economic capabilities, right? The European Union aims to be able to influence events anywhere in the world and drawing upon the full range of economic, political, and security instruments. But typically, its main instrument is economic, right? Its main instruments to pressure and cajole and incentivize countries to act in the way they want them to act is by economic instruments. And that's an important factor, right? Everybody knows how relatively well or poorly we live in this world. I could tell you when I was in Bulgaria, right? I mean, the Bulgarians were very much aware of, after communism collapsed, when I arrived in 1994, 5 years after communism collapsed, Bulgaria was so relatively poor compared to other European countries that I remember one of my students expressing to me something that was being discussed in the Bulgarian media about how the rest of Europe was so prosperous and developing so rapidly, Bulgarians risked becoming almost another species of human, a separate species of human being because of their low level of economic development and prosperity and expertise compared to Germany or France or Italy. And that's not just a historical issue, that's also an issue regarding Bosnia, right? And the former republics of the old Yugoslavia that emerged out of the breakup of Yugoslavia. Sure, Slovenia, the home of Laibach, is in the European Union, and that's great. And they're prosperous and doing well, and they're in the Eurozone. And but what about Bosnia? And what is the role of these economic incentives in bringing about peace for the European Union? Remember, the European Union is supposed to be a peace strategy for Europe. And the place where Europe is most challenged and where the European Union really has to show its ability to bring peace to ethnic conflicts is in the Balkans, in Southeastern Europe. European Union is not even mentioned or referenced in regard to Azerbaijan and Armenia these days, but the former Yugoslav countries are considered to be the real test case about the European Union being a force for peace in the kinds of conflicts, with regard to the kinds of conflicts that characterize much of the threats to peace and prosperity of human beings, interethnic conflicts in societies, in communities in which ethnic minority groups are mixed together, are interwoven together, like in the Caucasus, Azerbaijan and Armenia, like we talked about with regard to Macedonia, as we also referenced in regard to Bosnia. So this is a news report just from a couple of days ago. It's interesting in this news report, there is not one reference to the European Union. The Dayton Accords, which ended fighting in Bosnia 25 years ago, created a dysfunctional system that put in power the hands of politicians stoking ethnic division. That's the intro. We already covered briefly in class the maps of the European Union. If I can find Bosnia, let me see if I can find Bosnia. Yeah, I guess I hadn't opened up frozen conflict. How about here? We go here and stop share, and we go here, and so the share and Bosnia. And so here you see Bosnia, and let me see if I can find a map of Bosnia. Bosnia, by the way, was the place where the trigger for World War I happened, when the heir to the throne of Austria was assassinated by Serbian nationalists who viewed him, Franz Ferdinand, as a threat to their plans to break up Austria's empire in the Balkans and Southeastern Europe, so that they could get the Serb lands under Austria's control and unite those Serbian lands with Belgrade, with Serbia, the country next door to the Austrian Empire possessions, I should say, in southeastern Europe. And this triggered Russia to threaten Serbia. This triggered Austria to threaten Serbia. Russia then came to Serbia's aid as the protector of Serbia. Germany came to the protection of Austria, and the conflict soon escalated with France being drawn in, and beginning of World War I started in Bosnia, in what is today Bosnia. And you can see the breakup of Yugoslavia here, and this map highlights how today we have, I think I should show you a map of what Bosnia looks like today. These are Serb areas of Croatia, where I think most Serbs have been driven out. They didn't go back yet. And this is what Bosnia looks like today in the Dayton Accords, which established this situation. This is the Dayton Accords here, right? So this area here are Serbian areas, and these are Croat and Muslim areas in one united Croat Muslim Federation, and this is Republika Srpska. And these three groups, the Croats, the Muslims, and the Serbs, generally do not like each other, intensely dislike each other. Bosnia has about 4 million people, formerly are citizens of Bosnia, and the majority of them do not even live there anymore because of the inability for an effective government to emerge, because these three groups are suspicious, highly suspicious of each other. They are unable to cooperate effectively. So the government is weak, ineffective, and corruption is terrible in this country. And so people are desperate to make a better life for themselves and their families. So even the majority of the population who has citizenship in Bosnia-Herzegovina, they do not even live there anymore. They either live in Croatia or they've emigrated to Austria or Germany or other countries to make money, because the situation is so difficult still in Bosnia-Herzegovina. And I've come across news reports that claim that the only reason why this country is not war has not restarted in Bosnia-Herzegovina is because of the desire of these three groups to enter the European Union. And of course, if there's a war going on, Bosnia will never get into the European Union. But still, the situation is quite bad. There's Laibach, Ljubljana here in Slovenia. And so this news report highlights here how an effort, just to highlight an effort by someone to go back to Bosnia and try to start a business and develop the country. It says here, heartened by a peace deal between Bosnia's warring ethnic groups, the Croats, the Muslims, and the Bosniaks, the Muslims, and the Serbs, brokered 25 years ago by the United States, Yusuf Arifagic, a Bosnian refugee shelter in Norway. Norway's not part of the European Union, remember, returned home to help to rebuild his traumatized country. He took with him 100 Norwegian cows. So the Norwegians gave him these cows to try to start a dairy farm in Bosnia. Mr. Arifagic took the cows to his home village just down the road from the concentration camp, where he and thousands of other local Muslims were herded in the summer of 1992, and set up what became Bosnia's biggest dairy farm. This farm in Trnopolije now has 800 cows and 41 workers, a mix of Muslims, Orthodox Christian Serbs, and other Christians like Croats. Mr. Arifagic, 59, said he did not know the precise number of each ethnic group because, he says, I don't care. His refusal to put identity politics at the center of his business, however, has put him sharply at odds with a system created by the 1995 peace settlement, the Dayton Accords, that revolves around ethnicity and loyalty to one ethno-nationalist authority or another. It has also crippled one of the few success stories in the country, blighted by what reports to the United Nations Security Council in April and May of this year described as chronic dysfunctionality and the pandemic called corruption. Squeezed by requests for payoffs and other pressures from nationalist politicians pushing their own interests, Mr. Arifagic has decided to sell his cattle, lay off workers, and shut the farm. He's given up. Bosnia today is one big psychiatric ward, and we are all its patients, Mr. Rifikic said, bemoaning the tenacious grip of the hatred unleashed more than a quarter century ago when multi-ethnic Yugoslavia fell apart and neighbor set upon neighbor in a frenzy of fear-driven violence and nationalist passion, like in Armenia and Azerbaijan today. Same type of conflict. It goes on here. War engulfed the Balkans for 4 years, ignited by the end of a socialist dictatorship in Yugoslavia and the splintering of what had been a peaceful federal state. As nationalism took hold, Croats, Serbs, and Muslims living in Bosnia, the most ethnically mixed and therefore the most flammable part of the imploding Yugoslav state, took up arms, clamoring for their own states. And so the war killed about 100,000 people, drove more than 2 million from their homes, and it came to an end of the Dayton Accords, negotiated in Dayton, Ohio, my home state, Dayton, Ohio, the city of Dayton, at the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, in Ohio, on November 21, 1995. So this is the anniversary, right? And the Dayton Accords agreed to partition Bosnia as into 2 provinces, one with a Serb province called Republic of Serbia, or Republika Srpska in Serbian language, and the Muslim Croat Federation. But there are 3 separate groups, and the Croats do not like the Muslims any better than the Serbs. But the Americans forced the Croats and the Muslims to form a federation in order to counterbalance the Serbs. And 25 years later, this is a real consequence of the Dayton model, said Christopher Bennett, a former international official in Bosnia and author of the book, Bosnia's Paralyzed Peace. He added, it simply does not work. It stopped the war, but did not create conditions to make a life. So keep in mind, the European Union is saying, cooperate, you Bosnian Serbs, and you Muslims, and you Croats, and you will have much prosperity by joining the European Union for you and your family and your future. And it's not working. So I talk a lot in this class, in my classes, about nationalism, but nationalism doesn't explain everything. And nationalism is not the motivation for everything, but it is awfully powerful. And so the Serbs, the Croats, the Bosniak Muslims are unable to resolve their problems, even though they need to resolve these problems if they want to enter the European Union. But keep in mind, in this news report, the European Union is not mentioned one time. They mention Norway, and that's it. It goes on. Above this plethora of fiefs stands a weak and feud-ridden federal government headed by 3 presidents representing Croats, Muslims, and Serbs. They all speak the same language, and there is nothing to distinguish one group from another physically, but they are divided by religion, though few actually worship, by politics and by rival narratives of the war, and they rarely agree on much. For a time, the area in northwestern Bosnia, where Mr. Rifikic established his farm, encouraged hopes that wartime divisions could be overcome. Muslims who have been expelled returned in the years after the Dayton Agreement, first a nervous trickle, then in a joyous flood, but still they're concentrated in their separate communities, right? Emptied by Muslim residents, by ethnic cleansing, and reduced to burned out rubble in the early 1990s, the village district of Kozarac, which includes Mr. Rifikic's hamlet, returned to life in the early 2000s, but they mention that mostly Muslims live there. The Serbs and Croats do not live intermingled. They don't live next door to each other like they used to before the war happened. People make money and they send it home, and they built homes in Bosnia, but they don't stay there. They don't have their jobs there. They can't make a life there. They can't start a business there. This guy's dairy farm didn't work because you have to bribe people. People are pressuring you to bribe them all the time. You can't get agreements. You can't get the government to do anything for you if you don't belong to their ethnic group. And they don't even, the point is, these groups do not want to be together. The Bosnian Serbs don't want to be in Bosnia. The Bosnian Croats do not want to be in Bosnia. They want to join their neighbors. The Bosnian Muslims, the Bosnian Croats live here. This is Herzegovina. They live here in this region. They want to split off and join with Croatia, Republika Srpska, the Serbs in Bosnia. They don't want to be in Bosnia. They want to split off and join their territory with Serbia. The Muslims live here. the only group that really wants to keep Bosnia as a state are the Muslims. These people don't want to be in Bosnia. They want this section to break off and join with Croatia. These Republika Srpska, they want to break off and join with Serbia. But the European Union, United States, do not want to redraw boundaries. They do not want to redraw these boundaries that were created under Yugoslavia. Well, sorry about that. They do not want to redraw boundaries that were created under Yugoslavia. They do not want to change these boundaries that were the province boundaries created under communism at the end of World War II. They insist on keeping these boundaries. They don't want to allow Republika Srpska to leave Bosnia and join with Serbia, and they don't want to allow the Croats of Bosnia that live in Herzegovina for this region to break away and join with Croatia. Like I said, the only group that wants to really keep Bosnia as a state are the Muslims, because they don't want to be a minority anywhere else. They don't want to be part of Croatia. They don't want to be part of Serbia, because they as a group, they do not like each other. And like I said, this is where Serbs were concentrated, even in Croatia, but I don't think Serbs live here anymore. They were all driven out. This is showing what how the borders were changed amidst the war. And you see this again. The European Union will not, the European Union and the international community do not want to change the boundaries in the Caucasus between the Armenians and Azerbaijan. They want to keep the boundaries that were established by the communists in the Soviet Union and keep the boundaries established by the communists in the former Yugoslavia. And their justification for that, the European Union's justification, is that they said, if you start redrawing boundaries, you're never going to satisfy anyone. You're not going to satisfy anyone, because these maps are kind of deceptive, because even if they show where Republika Srpska is, there's still people that claim that their homes are here and they want that land back. So if you start redrawing boundaries, that the Americans and the Europeans say, it's never going to make anyone happy. It's not going to make everybody happy. It's not going to make, I should say, it's not going to make everybody happy. And you never stop redrawing boundaries. But still, you have a situation where, as I said today, these groups are intermingled. They live together next door to each other, Serbs, Muslims, and Croats before the war. The war is now, but as a consequence of the war, they're not intermixed together anymore. They live in separate communities, separate towns. So it would be possible, because of the war and the horrible ethnic cleansing and the atrocities and crimes committed and the forced population movements, that they could redraw the boundaries. And they're probably going to have to do this, because they cannot make Bosnia work. I mean, this situation cannot continue. Sooner or later, it's going to change. As I told you, it's almost absurd. A majority of the population in Bosnia does not live in Bosnia. They haven't gone back 25 years after the war is over. This person describes how people that have gone back have regretted it. So that's the situation, the challenge of nationalism. And so I think I have an exercise for us to do, if I can find it here. And stop share and go back and polling, and let's go do a poll. So here's a poll. Please answer this poll. Respond to the following statement. Peace in Europe and the world requires redrawing internationally recognized state borders to accommodate nationalism. 4 more people have to vote. Ten more seconds. Okay, so share results. And so your class is about split. As I said, I'm not saying you should redraw boundaries, among states as the starting point for addressing negotiations. I think I might have covered in a previous class, if I can find it. What did I do? Okay, so we go to not that. The Vance Owen plan. There were plans to intervene in Bosnia before Bosnia descended full scale into full civil war. I should tell you, people that say the Vance Owen plan was a plausible opportunity to prevent full scale war, as we already said, 100,000 people dead, tens of thousands of women raped, millions of people pushed out of their homes. They point out that when Vance and Owen were active in trying to negotiate this plan, the war was already started. People were already killing each other. It was too late to stop the war, and that might be plausible. There were other efforts earlier to intervene in Bosnia, again, with the plan to come up with a new constitutional arrangement for all of the former provinces of Yugoslavia before being recognized as independent states. The proposal was that the Croats and the Slovenes and the Serbs and the Bosnians, they had to come to an arrangement by which they would come up with a new system whereby they would protect the human rights of the different minorities living within them, including in Serbia. There's a large number of ethnic groups that are not Serbian, or as we showed in Croatia, or in Bosnia. But the fighting was escalating. The fighting was already happening. There, in the chaos and fear and passion that was escalating amidst democracy, by the way, right? Yugoslavia disintegrated into violent conflict in a blaze of democracy when the socialist dictatorship ended and they decided to have free elections in these countries. Politicians emerged who appealed for people to support them, pointing out that if I'm a Serb, I will protect you from those bad Croats who did bad things to us, most recently when the Germans and the Italians invaded Yugoslavia during World War II. And so I will protect you from those bad Croats, or I will protect you from those bad Muslims, or I will protect, and they're bad. And so democracy was the framework, was the context within which democratization was the framework, with the context within which Yugoslavia disintegrated in the war. So the point is, if you want to have democracy, you're going to have to accommodate nationalism. And that means allowing national self-determination. And that means coming up with an agreement by which the Serbs of Bosnia and the Croats of Bosnia and the Muslims of Bosnia would feel secure. And the European Union should have developed a common defense and security policy capability a long time ago to be able to send peacekeeping forces into this area to calm them down and make people feel secure that they're not going to be killed or stabbed in the back by their neighbor because there's a European soldier or a European policeman there watching. And the European Union did not have that capability at this time, 25 years ago or 30 years ago. They did not have that capability. So they've been attempting to develop that capability through the common defense and security policy, so if they can send peacekeeping forces to do what they should have done 30 years ago, but they couldn't. And they're still having difficulty. I mean, it wasn't a surprise that there was going to be a high probability of danger in Ukraine if Ukraine was recognized as an independent state. And Ukraine was recognized as an independent state. And there was peace there until Ukraine began to move towards closer association with the European Union in 2014. But keep in mind, this Bosnia and the former Yugoslavia, including Macedonia and Kosovo, that are the main test case for the European Union's ability to be an actor to promote peace in Europe in the midst of ethnic conflict. And if they can't do it in Yugoslavia, the former Yugoslavia, then they can't do it anywhere. And with some exceptions, of course, you can make the argument that the European Union has been effective and important in explaining peace in Ireland. But Ireland, Northern Ireland, that's a small area. Although with Ireland as a whole, it's about the same population as Bosnia, maybe a little bit bigger. So the European Union can do it in Ireland, but even that's under challenge because of British nationalism. But I want to highlight an important point. The chaos and violence were breaking out in Yugoslavia, and the Europeans were supposed to refuse to recognize Slovenia and Croatia and Serbia as independent states until they all came to an agreement about their new relationship with each other outside of the old Yugoslavia, specifically to protect the minorities' rights, human rights of the minorities living within their separate countries. And as the fighting escalated, Germany stepped in and said, Europeans, we're going to recognize Slovenia and Croatia as sovereign states because the fighting is already happening and Serbia is using the delay in our action and our behavior to use its dominance of the Yugoslav military and its resources and capabilities and weapons and supplies to try to annex the Serbian areas, majority areas of the former Yugoslavia to independent Serbia. So we're now going to recognize Slovenia and Croatia because we like them because they had been of the Austrian Empire, part of the greater German-dominated world before World War I. And we're going to do it whether or not France and Britain agree to it or not. We're going to do it. So you have the choice. And the French and the British acquiesced to Germany's demands. Keep in mind, this is happening not long after Germany had reunited itself in 1989, 1990. And so it looked like an act of German nationalism that they viewed the Croats and the Slovenes that had been traditionally close to German culture. I mean, you saw Laibach singing in German there. This is a sensitive topic, right? And they acquiesced to Germany insisting on the recognition of Slovenia and Croatia as an independent state, which further instigated the war among these groups in Bosnia, where Serbs and Croats and Bosnian Muslims live, fearing that they're going to be under the domination of either a greater Croatia or a greater Serbia and hating each other. And so when that happened, when the German recognition of Slovenia and Croatia occurred as independent states, then it pretty much guaranteed that this issue of the final settlement regarding Bosnia was going to be settled on the battlefield. And so that's brought us to the conditions that exist currently in Bosnia. And despite all of the efforts of the European Union, they have not been able to put Bosnia back together again in 25 years. So beware, Bosnia is not in the news these days, but it's going to be in the news in the future. And they're probably going to have to come up with some kind of new arrangement regarding what to do with these different groups, with the European Union being permanently stationed to protect the interests of the Muslims here, because the Muslims are a minority and they're threatened by they see themselves as threatened by Croats and Serbs. And they don't have their own state besides Bosnia. That's the only place they live. They don't have a neighboring state like Croatia does. Croats have Croatia, Serbs have Serbia. And so something along those lines. So we're going to have to stop there. And do you have any questions? If not, I'm going to close the class and save the recording. So bye.